George Kelly and the Architecture of Personal Constructs. Introduction. George Alexander Kelly, an American clinical psychologist and the architect of personal construct theory, PCT, was one of the most original thinkers in 20th century psychology. His work emerged not only as a response to the dominant psychoanalytic and behavioral paradigms of his time, but also as a reflection of the socioeconomic tumult he witnessed during the Great Depression. At a time when deterministic views of human behavior prevailed, Kelly proposed a more nuanced, cognitive, and phenomenological model of personality rooted in individual meaning-making and interpretation. Early life and influences. Born in 1905 in Kansas, Kelly grew up in a devout Presbyterian family with a strong work ethic. His early education traversed engineering, mathematics, sociology, and education before settling in psychology, a path that foreshadowed his eclectic and interdisciplinary approach. He taught at various institutions, ultimately earning his PhD from the University of Iowa. His early exposure to practical problems in education, particularly in the Midwest during the interwar years, laid the foundation for his pragmatic approach to psychology. However, it was his work as a traveling clinical psychologist in rural Kansas during the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression that provided the crucible for his theoretical innovation. The pivotal realization. In the 1930s, Kelly encountered a perplexing pattern among clients devastated by the economic collapse. Many had suffered catastrophic financial loss, yet their emotional responses varied dramatically. Some descended into depression and anxiety, while others demonstrated resilience and even optimism. This discrepancy led Kelly to ask a deceptively simple question. If external circumstances were similar, what explained the internal differences in outlook? The answer, he realized, lay in how individuals construed their experience. That is, in the unique cognitive frameworks through which they interpreted reality. It was this insight that led directly to the formulation of personal construct theory. Personal construct theory. Kelly published his theory in the monumental 2-volume work, The Psychology of Personal Constructs, 1955. In it, he proposed a radically constructivist model of personality. According to Kelly, people are like personal scientists, actively engaged in observing, hypothesizing, predicting, and revising their mental models of the world. These internal models, known as personal constructs, are the templates through which they understand experience. Constructs are typically bipolar dimensions, such as friendly-hostile, competent-incompetent, or secure-insecure. These are not fixed traits or abstract categories, but rather personalized filters developed through experience. Each individual possesses a unique constellation of constructs, shaped by culture, history, relationships, and personal interpretation. Constructs can be refined, expanded, or abandoned as life unfolds, which accounts for the fluidity of human personality. Crucially, Kelly argued that psychological distress stems not from unconscious conflicts, as Freud maintained, nor from maladaptive stimulus-response patterns, as behaviorists held, but from the failure of one's construct system to adequately predict and interpret events. When our constructs no longer map effectively onto reality, we experience anxiety, confusion, and existential threat. Thus, therapy becomes a reconstructive process, an opportunity to examine, challenge, and revise the meanings we attach to life. To explore these inner frameworks, Kelly developed the Role Construct Repertory Test, REP test, a structured interview technique designed to uncover the core dimensions along which people classify others in their social world. By eliciting these comparisons, psychologists could gain insight into the client's unique worldview and help them experiment with new ways of understanding themselves and others. Comparison with contemporaries. Kelly's approach differed markedly from the prevailing psychological doctrines of his time. Unlike Freud, who emphasized hidden drives and past traumas, Kelly focused on conscious thought and future-oriented meaning-making. In contrast to B.F. Skinner's behaviorism, which portrayed humans as passive responders to environmental stimuli, Kelly emphasized autonomy, choice, and prediction. His theory shared some affinity with Carl Rogers' humanistic psychology, particularly the emphasis on the subjective experience, but went further in providing a structured epistemology of how people construct reality. Kelly's work also anticipated later developments in cognitive psychology, His emphasis on mental representations, hypotheses, and predictions foreshadowed the rise of schema theory, pioneered by Aaron Beck and others. Indeed, some cognitive behavioral therapists today acknowledge Kelly as a precursor to modern CBT, even though he was not directly part of the movement. Influence and legacy. Though initially overshadowed by louder theoretical voices, Kelly's personal construct theory has endured and evolved. It became a cornerstone of constructivist psychology and has informed research and practice in psychotherapy, education, organizational development, and social psychology. In the United Kingdom, George Kelly's influence was particularly strong. Researchers such as Faye Francella and Mildred Shaw developed extensive applications of PCT in clinical settings, education, and even software engineering. The Center for Personal Construct Psychology at the University of Hertfordshire, for example, remains a leading hub for research inspired by Kelly's legacy. In clinical contexts, constructivist therapy, inspired by Kelly, encourages clients to explore alternative interpretations of their experiences and to experiment with new construct systems. This approach is particularly effective in addressing identity crises, intercultural adaptation, and existential concerns, where standard behavioral techniques may fall short. Kelly's ideas also found their way into cognitive science and artificial intelligence. His metaphor of the human being as a personal scientist contributed to discussions around predictive coding and mental modeling in computational psychology. Moreover, his model of dynamic knowledge revision aligns closely with current theories of neuroplasticity and Bayesian inference in neuroscience. Posthumous recognition and continued relevance. Since his death in 1967, Kelly's reputation has grown steadily. Scholars have increasingly recognized the prescience of his work in an age increasingly concerned with identity, multiplicity of meaning, and cultural relativism. Personal construct theory has been applied in cross-cultural psychology to understand how people from different backgrounds organize their worlds in vastly different, yet equally valid, ways. It has also informed narrative psychology, which views lives as evolving stories shaped by the constructs we employ to understand past and future. Perhaps most importantly, Kelly's theory resonates in today's therapeutic landscape, where meaning-making, client agency, and personal narratives are increasingly central. In an age of psychological pluralism, where rigid categories often fail to capture human complexity, Kelly's model provides a flexible, respectful, and empowering framework for understanding personality. Conclusion. George Kelly left behind not just a theory, but an epistemological revolution. He urged us to see individuals not as passive recipients of conditioning or victims of unconscious forces, but as active interpreters of reality. Personal construct theory provided a lens through which the human mind could be studied as both scientist and artist, logical yet imaginative, structured yet evolving. The questions he posed, how do we make sense of the world, and how does that sense shape our destiny, remain as vital today as when he first asked them. Through the enduring legacy of his work, Kelly continues to inspire psychologists, educators, and thinkers, seeking to honor the dignity and creativity of human thought. Here's the revised conclusion of the article with additional paragraphs discussing how George Kelly's personal construct theory, PCT, has implications beyond psychology, particularly within the philosophy of mind. Kelly's personal construct theory, PCT, resonates beyond clinical psychology, entering domains such as education, sociology, and organizational behavior. But perhaps most compellingly, it has implications for the philosophy of mind. Central to PCT is the idea that individuals actively interpret, rather than passively receive, reality through a personal system of meaning-making. This premise aligns with constructivist views of cognition, which assert that the mind is not merely a mirror reflecting the world, but a model builder that constantly tests and revises its conceptual frameworks. In the philosophy of mind, PCT contributes to the ongoing dialogue between realism and constructivism, and between representational and enactive theories of cognition. Kelly's approach anticipates, in a psychological form, later developments such as Thomas Kuhn's paradigms in scientific thinking or Francisco Varela's enactivism. It suggests that the mind is best understood not as a vessel filled with impressions of an objective world, but as a proactive system engaged in hypothesis testing, much like a scientist. In this view, perception and understanding are not fixed representations, but are filtered through and even generated by our personal constructs. Furthermore, PCT opens philosophical questions about identity, selfhood, and the continuity of personal experience. If we are, in essence, a network of fluid, evolving constructs, then what constitutes the self? How stable person across time if their conceptual map of the world is in flux? These questions draw Kelly's theory into dialogue with thinkers like William James, who saw the self as a stream of consciousness, and with contemporary debates in cognitive science about the modular versus unified self. Ultimately, PCT challenges the Cartesian notion of a mind passively observing a knowable reality. Instead, it posits a participatory consciousness, one in which each individual navigates the world through an evolving lattice of anticipations, shaped by experience, culture, and personal history. In doing so, Kelly's theory not only provided a groundbreaking framework for psychotherapy, but also contributed a uniquely psychological voice to the broader philosophical exploration of human understanding.